You don't even speak English." That's what the CEO laughed at the cleaning lady, until she responded in 7 languages. You're about to witness an incredible story of hidden intelligence, cultural prejudice, and how assumptions about language and education can lead to the most shocking surprises. If you're ready for this mind-blowing tale of linguistic mastery and sweet vindication, smash that like button, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss amazing stories like this one. Trust me, what this cleaning lady reveals about herself will leave you absolutely speechless. Let's dive in. The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Global Tech International's headquarters in downtown Seattle as Maria Esperanza pushed her cleaning cart through the empty corridors of the 42nd floor. At 5:30 a.m., the building was nearly silent, except for the soft whir of her vacuum cleaner and the distant hum of air conditioning systems keeping the corporate offices at their optimal temperature. Maria had been cleaning these offices for 4 years, arriving each morning before dawn to ensure that the executives and their staff would find their workspace immaculate when they arrived. At 51, she moved with quiet efficiency, her small frame belying the strength required to clean 40 floors of one of Seattle's most prestigious office buildings. She wore the standard uniform of Apex Cleaning Services, navy blue pants and a matching polo shirt with the company logo, comfortable sneakers that made no sound on the expensive flooring, and a name tag that identified her simply as Maria. To the executives who occasionally encountered her during late-night work sessions or early morning meetings, she was part of the building's infrastructure, necessary but invisible. What none of them knew was that Maria Esperanza held a doctorate in comparative linguistics from the University of Barcelona, spoke 7 languages fluently, and had spent 15 years as a simultaneous interpreter for the United Nations before a series of personal tragedies had led her to immigrate to the United States and start over in the only job she could find that didn't require extensive credential verification. Her journey to cleaning office buildings had begun 3 years earlier, when her husband, Carlos, had died suddenly of a heart attack, leaving her alone to care for her elderly mother who was suffering from advanced Alzheimer's disease. The medical bills from her mother's care, combined with the bureaucratic nightmare of getting her Spanish credentials recognized in the United States, had forced Maria to take whatever work she could find immediately. The job at Apex Cleaning paid enough to cover her mother's care facility costs and her own modest rent in a small apartment in Ballard. More importantly, it allowed her to work hours that didn't conflict with her evening visits to her mother, who was now in the final stages of a disease that had slowly erased 40 years of memories while leaving Maria to grieve the loss of the only family she had left in America. As Maria cleaned the conference rooms and executive offices on the 42nd floor, she often listened to the conversations of late-working employees, partly to ensure she didn't disturb important meetings, but also because the corporate discussions reminded her of her previous life as a diplomat and interpreter. She understood every word of the business negotiations, contract discussions, and strategic planning sessions that took place around her, but her position required her to remain silent and invisible. This morning, however, was different. As Maria approached the corner office belonging to CEO Richard Blackstone, she could hear raised voices coming from within. Blackstone was known throughout the building for his volatile temperament and his tendency to berate employees who failed to meet his exacting standards. "The Shanghai deal is falling apart," Blackstone was shouting into his phone. "I don't care what time it is in China. Get me someone who can speak to their negotiating team in their own language." Maria paused outside the office, recognizing the frustration in his voice. She had heard similar conversations over the past several months, as global tech struggled to expand into international markets, repeatedly failing to close deals due to communication barriers and cultural misunderstandings. Through the glass walls of Blackstone's office, Maria could see him pacing behind his massive desk, his silver hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled from a night of crisis management. At 62, Blackstone had built global tech from a small software startup into a multinational corporation worth over $5 billion. But his success had come at the cost of developing patience for obstacles he couldn't solve through sheer force of will. "Sir," came the voice of Jennifer Walsh, Blackstone's executive assistant, who had apparently arrived early to help manage the crisis. "The interpreter we hired for the Shanghai negotiations called in sick, and the backup service says they don't have anyone available on such short notice." Blackstone slammed his phone down on his desk with enough force to make Maria wince. 48 hours to close a $200 million deal, and we can't find someone who speaks Mandarin? This is incompetent beyond belief. Maria understood his frustration better than he could possibly know. She had spent years facilitating exactly these kinds of international negotiations, helping corporate executives and government officials navigate the complex cultural and linguistic challenges of global business. The Shanghai deal he was discussing was clearly a critical expansion into the Chinese market, the kind of opportunity that could define a company's future growth. She also knew, from overhearing previous conversations, that global tech's attempts at international expansion had been hampered by a series of cultural missteps and communication failures that had cost them deals in Germany, Japan, and Brazil over the past year. "What about that translation service in Vancouver?" Jennifer suggested. "They might have someone who could fly down this morning." "Vancouver is 3 hours away," Blackstone replied tersely. "The Shanghai team will be in meetings all day. By the time anyone gets here, we'll have missed our window." Maria continued her cleaning, moving quietly around the offices adjacent to Blackstone's while monitoring the crisis unfolding nearby. Her professional training as an interpreter had taught her to pick up on the nuances of business negotiations, and she could tell that this particular deal was more important than the usual corporate expansion. From the fragments of conversation she had overheard over the past weeks, global tech was facing increased competition from Chinese technology companies and needed to establish partnerships in Asia to remain competitive in their core markets. The Shanghai deal wasn't just about growth, it was about survival in a rapidly globalizing industry. "Sir," Jennifer said, "there's also the issue of the presentation materials. Everything is in English, but the Chinese executives specifically requested materials in Mandarin for their board review." "How long would it take to get everything translated?" Blackstone asked. "At least a week, according to our usual service." Blackstone's response was a string of profanity that made Maria grateful her mother wasn't there to hear it. The older woman had raised her daughter to believe that intelligence and dignity were more important than wealth or title, lessons that had guided Maria through her diplomatic career and that sustained her now as she cleaned the offices of people who had both wealth and title, but often lacked the wisdom to use them effectively. As Maria entered the supply closet adjacent to Blackstone's office to refill her cleaning supplies, she could hear the conversation continuing with increasing desperation. "What about the contract terms?" Blackstone was asking. "Half of these documents are in legal language that even our lawyers struggle with. How are we supposed to explain complex intellectual property agreements to a Chinese negotiating team through gestures and Google Translate?" Maria paused in her restocking, struck by the irony of the situation. She had spent the last 15 years of her professional life helping executives exactly like Blackstone navigate precisely these challenges. She had translated intellectual property agreements, facilitated technology transfer negotiations, and mediated cultural misunderstandings that could make or break international business deals. But to Richard Blackstone, she was just part of the cleaning crew, someone whose intelligence, education, and expertise were invisible because of the uniform she wore and the assumptions people made about immigrants who worked in service industries. The phone in Blackstone's office rang again, and Maria could hear his increasingly desperate conversations with translation services, consulting firms, and business contacts across the Pacific Northwest. Each call ended with the same result. No one could provide the kind of comprehensive linguistic and cultural support that global tech needed to salvage their Shanghai negotiations. As the morning progressed and the regular office staff began arriving, Maria continued her rounds while observing the growing crisis. Jennifer had assembled a team of assistants who were frantically calling every translation service on the West Coast. The marketing department was scrambling to create simplified presentation materials that could be understood without extensive translation. The legal department was trying to summarize complex contracts into plain English that might be more easily translated by automated services. All of their efforts were focused on finding quick fixes for a problem that required exactly the kind of expertise Maria possessed, but that no one thought to ask her about because her education and experience weren't visible in her cleaning uniform. At 10 a.m., as Maria was cleaning the conference room where the afternoon's crisis meetings would take place, she overheard Blackstone on the phone with what appeared to be his final option. "What do you mean you can provide a translator but not an interpreter?" he was saying. "What's the difference?" Maria shook her head at the question. After 15 years in the field, she knew that most people didn't understand the distinction between translation and interpretation, or why that distinction could be critical in high-stakes business negotiations. "So, your person can translate documents," Blackstone continued, "but they can't facilitate real-time conversation during negotiations. That's completely useless for what we need." The call ended with Blackstone's characteristic slam of the phone, followed by a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. "Jennifer!" he shouted. "Get in here! We need a new plan!" Jennifer Walsh appeared in his doorway within seconds, notepad in hand, and the patient expression of someone accustomed to managing her boss's volcanic temperament. "The Shanghai team confirmed they'll be available for video conference at 2 p.m. our time," she reported. "But, sir, without proper interpretation services—" "I know what we're facing," Blackstone interrupted. $200 million down the drain because we can't find someone who speaks Chinese. It's ridiculous. In a city like Seattle, with all our tech companies and international connections, how is it possible that we can't find a qualified interpreter?" Maria continued cleaning around them, organizing the conference room for what she suspected would be a disaster of a meeting. She had observed enough failed negotiations to recognize the signs: desperation, poor preparation, and cultural insensitivity that would likely offend the Chinese executives before the business discussion even began. As she arranged chairs around the conference table, Maria found herself thinking about her mother, who was spending her final months in a care facility that cost more than many people's annual salary. The woman who had taught Maria 5 languages before she graduated high school, who had encouraged her daughter's diplomatic career, who had been so proud when Maria was selected to interpret at international trade summits. That woman now struggled to remember Maria's name, but she still occasionally slipped into the Catalan of her childhood when the Alzheimer's allowed her access to her earliest memories. The irony wasn't lost on Maria that she was now financially dependent on cleaning the offices of people who desperately needed her expertise, but who would never think to ask for it. At 11 a.m., as the crisis reached its peak, Maria was dusting the bookshelves in Blackstone's office when she overheard a conversation that finally pushed her past her professional invisibility. "Sir," Jennifer was saying, "I hate to bring this up, but the Shanghai deal isn't our only international negotiation at risk. The Munich partnership discussions are scheduled for next week, and we still haven't resolved the translation issues for their technical documentation." "Munich!" Blackstone's voice carried a note of panic. "I thought that was handled." "The German executive specifically requested that all technical specifications be presented in German, and they want to conduct the negotiations in their native language to ensure there are no misunderstandings about the engineering requirements." "So we need German interpreters too?" Yes, sir. And, sir, the Tokyo licensing agreement discussions are scheduled for the week after that. Blackstone's silence was more ominous than his shouting had been. How many languages are we talking about, Jennifer? For our current international expansion plans? Mandarin for Shanghai, German for Munich, Japanese for Tokyo, Portuguese for Sao Paulo, French for Montreal, Arabic for Dubai, and Spanish for the Mexico City office. Maria stopped dusting, struck by the realization that she was fluent in every single language Jennifer had just listed. 7 major deals, Blackstone said quietly. 7 languages. 7 potential disasters. Sir, with respect, perhaps we should consider postponing some of these negotiations until we can secure proper linguistic support. Postpone? Blackstone's voice rose again. Do you understand what postponing means in international business, Jennifer? It means our competitors get there first. It means we lose market position that took us 5 years to build. It means we explain to our shareholders why we're falling behind in every major global market, because we can't find people who speak the languages our customers speak. Maria had heard enough. For 4 years, she had cleaned these offices while listening to executives struggle with problems she could solve in her sleep. She had watched deals fail due to cultural misunderstandings she could have prevented, seen opportunities lost because of communication barriers she could have eliminated. The executives at Global Tech needed exactly the expertise she possessed, and while she had grown accustomed to being invisible, her mother's medical bills and her own sense of professional purpose made it impossible to continue pretending she didn't have solutions to their problems. Taking a deep breath, Maria set down her dusting cloth and approached Blackstone's desk. "Excuse me, Mr. Blackstone," she said in clear, unaccented English. Blackstone looked up from his papers with obvious irritation. "What is it? I'm in the middle of a crisis here." "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation about the Shanghai negotiations," Maria said calmly. "I believe I can help with your interpretation needs." Blackstone stared at her for a moment, as if processing the fact that his cleaning lady was speaking to him about business matters. Then he let out a harsh laugh. "I'm sorry, what did you just say?" "I said I can help with your interpretation needs for the Shanghai negotiations." The laugh that followed was cruel and dismissive. "You? You're going to help with international business negotiations?" Maria maintained her composure, though she could feel heat rising in her cheeks. "Yes, sir. I have extensive experience in—" "Extensive experience?" Blackstone interrupted, his voice dripping with condescension. "In what exactly? Cleaning offices, emptying trash cans?" Jennifer Walsh, who had been watching this exchange with growing discomfort, tried to intervene. "Sir, perhaps we should—" "No, Jennifer, this is perfect," Blackstone said, his anger and frustration finding a target. "Our international expansion is collapsing because we can't find qualified interpreters, and our cleaning lady thinks she can solve our problems." Maria stood quietly, allowing Blackstone to continue his tirade while she mentally prepared her response. "Let me guess," Blackstone continued mockingly, "you speak a little Spanish at home, so you think you're qualified to handle million-dollar business negotiations with Chinese executives?" "Actually, sir," Maria began. "Actually nothing," Blackstone cut her off. "I don't have time for this nonsense. You don't even speak English properly, I can hear your accent from here, and you want to handle complex international business negotiations." The comment about her accent was the final straw. Maria had worked for years to minimize her Spanish accent when speaking English, not because she was ashamed of her heritage, but because she had learned that accented English led people to make assumptions about her intelligence and education. "Mr. Blackstone," she said, her voice remaining calm despite her growing anger, "with all due respect, I speak English perfectly well, but if you prefer, I'm happy to continue this conversation in any of the other languages you mentioned." "Other languages?" Blackstone laughed again. "Right. Sure you do." Maria switched to fluent Mandarin. I understand that global tech is facing significant challenges in expanding into the Chinese market due to communication barriers and cultural misunderstandings that could be easily resolved with proper linguistic support. Blackstone's laughter died abruptly, replaced by stunned silence. Maria continued in perfect German. Your Munich partnership discussions involve complex technical specifications that require precise translation to ensure both parties understand the engineering requirements and legal obligations. Jennifer Walsh's eyes widened in amazement as Maria switched to flawless Japanese. The Tokyo licensing agreement will require cultural sensitivity regarding intellectual property negotiations, which differ significantly from American business practices. Without pausing, Maria transitioned to Portuguese. Your São Paulo expansion plans would benefit from understanding the regulatory environment in Brazil, which involves specific legal terminology that must be translated accurately. She followed with fluent French. The Montreal negotiations will require bilingual documentation that meets Canadian legal requirements for both English and French versions of all contracts. Then Arabic. Your Dubai partnership requires understanding of Middle Eastern business culture, where relationship building and respect for hierarchy are essential to successful negotiations. Finally, she concluded in Spanish. And your Mexico City office expansion involves not just language translation, but understanding of Mexican corporate law and business customs that differ significantly from American practices. The silence that followed was deafening. Blackstone sat frozen behind his desk, staring at Maria as if seeing her for the first time. Jennifer Walsh's mouth hung open in shock. How? Blackstone finally managed. How is this possible? If this incredible moment of vindication and shock has you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to show your support by hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel for more amazing stories of hidden talents and sweet justice. Ring that notification bell too, because what Maria reveals next about her background will absolutely blow your mind. Maria maintained her professional composure, though she felt a deep satisfaction at the stunned expressions around her. I hold a doctorate in comparative linguistics from the University of Barcelona, and I worked for 15 years as a simultaneous interpreter for the United Nations, specializing in international trade negotiations and diplomatic conferences. Blackstone's face had gone completely pale. You worked for the United Nations? Yes, sir. I facilitated negotiations between corporate executives, government officials, and international organizations in all 7 of the languages your company currently needs for its expansion plans. Jennifer Walsh found her voice first. Dr. Esperanza, why are you working as... Why am I cleaning offices instead of interpreting for international businesses? Maria finished the question gently. Because when my husband died 3 years ago, I needed immediate income to pay for my mother's Alzheimer's care. Getting my credentials recognized in the United States would have taken months or years, and I needed to work immediately. Blackstone seemed to be struggling to process this information. You've been cleaning my office for 4 years, and you're actually a doctoral-level linguist. Yes, sir. I've been listening to your international business discussions for months, and I could have solved most of your communication problems at any point, but I assumed you weren't interested in input from your cleaning staff. The comment hit its mark, and Blackstone had the grace to look ashamed. Dr. Esperanza, I apologize. My behavior was completely inappropriate. No. Apology accepted, Mr. Blackstone. Now, would you like my help with the Shanghai negotiations, or would you prefer to continue looking for other linguistic support? Jennifer Walsh immediately stepped in. Dr. Esperanza, yes, absolutely. We would be honored to have your assistance. But I have to ask, can you really handle simultaneous interpretation for complex business negotiations? Maria smiled for the first time all morning. Ms. Walsh, I spent 2 years facilitating trade negotiations between the European Union and China, including intellectual property agreements very similar to what global tech is trying to establish. I'm quite familiar with both the linguistic and cultural requirements. Blackstone stood up behind his desk, his entire demeanor transformed from condescending dismissal to genuine respect. Dr. Esperanza, I need to ask you a direct question. Can you save the Shanghai deal? I can't guarantee that your business proposal will be accepted, Maria replied honestly, but I can ensure that communication barriers don't prevent you from presenting your offer effectively, and I can help you avoid cultural mistakes that might offend your potential partners. What about the other negotiations? Munich, Tokyo, all the rest? I can support all of your current international expansion plans, Mr. Blackstone. The question is whether you're prepared to treat me as a professional consultant rather than as part of your cleaning staff. Blackstone's face flushed with embarrassment. Dr. Esperanza, I want to offer you a position as Global Tech's Director of International Business Development, effective immediately. The salary would be, well, significantly more than what you're making with the cleaning service. Maria considered the offer carefully. I appreciate the offer, Mr. Blackstone, but I need to understand what this position would actually involve. I'm not interested in being a token appointment to make you feel better about your assumptions. Fair enough, Blackstone replied. Jennifer, get legal and HR in here immediately. I want Dr. Esperanza to have a contract that reflects her actual qualifications and the value she brings to this company. Over the next hour, as word spread through Global Tech's executive floors that the cleaning lady was actually a UN-trained linguist, Maria found herself at the center of a whirlwind of activity. Lawyers arrived to draft employment contracts, HR representatives discussed salary and benefits packages, and marketing executives began strategizing how to leverage her expertise for their international campaigns. But the real test came at 2 p.m. when the Shanghai video conference was scheduled to begin. Maria had spent the intervening time reviewing Global Tech's proposal documents, making notes about cultural considerations, and preparing talking points that would resonate with Chinese business executives. She had also advised Blackstone on proper etiquette for the opening of the meeting, explaining the importance of relationship building and respect for hierarchy in Chinese business culture. As the video conference began, Maria sat beside Blackstone at the head of the conference table, wearing a professional blazer that Jennifer had quickly procured to replace her cleaning uniform. The transformation was remarkable. The invisible cleaning woman had become a confident, authoritative presence who commanded the room's attention. The Shanghai executives, led by Chairman Wei Tianming, were initially surprised to learn that Global Tech had secured high-level interpretation services on such short notice. But as Maria began facilitating the conversation, switching seamlessly between English and Mandarin while explaining cultural context and business implications, their surprise turned to obvious respect. Chairman Wei asks about Global Tech's commitment to long-term partnership rather than short-term profit, Maria translated, then added quietly to Blackstone. This is a crucial question in Chinese business culture. They need to hear about relationship building, not just financial returns. Blackstone nodded and addressed the camera. Please tell Chairman Wei that Global Tech views this partnership as a 20-year commitment to mutual growth and shared success. As Maria translated the response, she could see the positive reaction from the Chinese executives. The conversation continued for 2 hours, with Maria not only translating language, but also explaining cultural context, clarifying technical terminology, and helping both sides understand the implications of various contract terms. When the video conference ended, Chairman Wei addressed Maria directly in Mandarin, complimenting her professionalism and cultural sensitivity. The Shanghai team agreed to move forward with detailed contract negotiations, expressing confidence that communication would not be a barrier to reaching agreement. As the video connection ended, the Global Tech conference room erupted in applause. Blackstone stood up and extended his hand to Maria. "Dr. Esperanza, I owe you an enormous apology and an enormous debt of gratitude. You just saved a $200 million deal that I was certain we had lost." Maria shook his hand with quiet dignity. "Mr. Blackstone, I'm pleased I could help, but I hope this experience teaches Global Tech something about recognizing talent wherever it exists in your organization." "It absolutely does," Blackstone replied. "Dr. Esperanza, I want to make you an offer that goes beyond the director position we discussed. I want to create a new division, International Cultural Relations, with you as vice president. You would oversee all of Global Tech's international expansion efforts, with a team of cultural consultants and interpreters reporting to you." The offer was extraordinary, both financially and professionally. It represented not just a job, but the opportunity to build something meaningful while using all of her skills and experience. "I'm interested, Mr. Blackstone, but I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I want to establish a program that identifies and develops overlooked talent throughout Global Tech. If someone as qualified as me could work for 4 years as a cleaning lady without anyone recognizing my capabilities, there are probably other employees whose potential is being wasted." Blackstone nodded immediately. "Agreed. What else?" "Second, I want to establish partnerships with immigrant service organizations to help other professionals get their credentials recognized in the United States. There are probably dozens of people in this city with advanced degrees who are working in service jobs because they can't navigate the credential recognition process." "Done." "Anything else?" Maria thought about her mother, spending her final months in a care facility, and about all the other immigrants who had given up successful careers to start over in America. "Third, I want to establish a scholarship fund for children of immigrants who want to study international relations or linguistics. We need more people who can bridge cultural gaps in global business." "Dr. Esperanza," Blackstone said with genuine emotion, "all of your conditions are not only accepted, they're admirable. You're thinking about using your success to help others in similar situations." 6 months later, Dr. Maria Esperanza stood in her corner office on the 45th floor of Global Tech's headquarters, looking out over Seattle's skyline as she prepared for another day of international negotiations. As Vice President of International Cultural Relations, she had successfully facilitated business partnerships in 12 countries, saving Global Tech an estimated $500 million in potential lost opportunities. But perhaps more importantly, she had established the programs she had requested, helping 3 other highly qualified immigrants within Global Tech transition from service positions to professional roles that utilize their actual expertise. Her hidden talent initiative had become a model that other companies were studying and implementing. The credential recognition program had helped 47 immigrants get their professional qualifications recognized in the United States, and the scholarship fund had already provided educational support to 23 children of immigrants who were studying international relations, linguistics, and cultural studies. The Shanghai partnership had been extraordinarily successful, leading to expanded operations that employed over 300 people in both countries. The Munich technical partnership had resulted in breakthrough innovations that positioned Global Tech as a leader in European markets. Each of the 7 international deals Maria had initially mentioned had been completed successfully, generating over $1.2 billion in new revenue for the company. But the personal satisfaction went beyond financial success. Maria's mother had lived to see her daughter's professional resurrection, spending her final weeks proud that Maria was once again using her gifts to help people understand each other across cultural and linguistic barriers. At the memorial service after her mother's passing, Maria had spoken in all 7 of her languages, sharing memories and expressing gratitude to the international community of friends and colleagues who had supported her family during their most difficult years. Richard Blackstone, who had attended the service along with dozens of Maria's new colleagues, had been moved by the multilingual tributes and by the obvious respect Maria commanded from people representing cultures and countries around the world. "I learned something important from you, Dr. Esperanza," he had said afterward. "Intelligence and education don't always come in the packages we expect. If I hadn't made such ignorant assumptions about what a cleaning lady could know, I might have recognized your talents years earlier." "The important thing," Maria had replied, "is that you were willing to listen and change when you realized you were wrong. That's rarer than you might think." A year after her transformation from cleaning lady to vice president, Maria received an invitation that brought her career full circle. The United Nations was hosting a conference on international trade and cultural understanding, and they wanted her to serve as the keynote speaker. Standing at the podium in the same building where she had worked for 15 years, addressing an audience of diplomats, corporate executives, and cultural experts, Maria reflected on the unexpected journey that had brought her to this moment. "Too often," she told the assembled delegates, "we make assumptions about people based on their current circumstances rather than their capabilities. We see a cleaning uniform and assume ignorance. We hear an accent and assume incompetence. We observe someone struggling with English and assume they lack intelligence." She paused, looking out over the audience, where she could see several former UN colleagues who remembered her from her diplomatic career. But intelligence, education, and cultural understanding exist in every community and every profession. The woman cleaning your office might be a former professor. The man serving your coffee might be a trained engineer. The person struggling with English might be fluent in 4 other languages. Maria's speech, delivered in alternating segments in all 7 of her languages, received a standing ovation. But more importantly, it led to the establishment of an international program designed to help qualified immigrants get their credentials recognized across national boundaries. The program, officially called the International Professional Recognition Initiative, was implemented in 12 countries within 2 years and helped thousands of highly qualified immigrants transition from survival jobs to careers that utilize their actual expertise. As Maria returned to her seat after the presentation, she thought about the morning 4 years earlier, when she had been cleaning Richard Blackstone's office while he desperately searched for linguistic support she could have provided at any moment. The woman who had been dismissed as someone who didn't even speak English had become an internationally recognized expert on cross-cultural communication. The cleaning lady who had been invisible had become a voice for recognizing talent wherever it existed, but perhaps most importantly, her story had become a reminder that assumptions about education, intelligence, and capability based on someone's current job or accent or immigration status were not just wrong. They were costly mistakes that deprived organizations and communities of exactly the expertise they most needed. As she prepared to leave the UN building, Maria's phone buzzed with a text from her assistant at Global Tech. "The Rome negotiations team is requesting your support for next week's partnership discussions. Also, the President of Spain would like to schedule a call about the cultural exchange program." Maria smiled as she walked through the halls, where she had once worked as a diplomat representing her country, and where she now worked as an advocate for recognizing talent and breaking down the barriers that prevented qualified people from using their gifts. The cleaning lady who had responded in 7 languages had become proof that intelligence, expertise, and capability could be found in the most unexpected places. If only people had the wisdom to look past their assumptions and actually listen to what others had to offer. Sometimes the most important conversations begin with someone having the courage to speak up, even when everyone expects them to remain silent. And sometimes the most qualified person in the room is the one everyone has overlooked. This incredible story of hidden talents and deserved recognition reminds us that we should never judge someone's intelligence by their accent, their education by their job, or their potential by their current circumstances. If this amazing journey from invisible to indispensable inspired you, please share that feeling by hitting the like button and subscribing to our channel for more powerful stories about people who prove that brilliance comes in all forms. Don't forget to ring that notification bell, because everyone deserves to be seen for their true capabilities, not their job title. Remember, the next time you encounter someone whose first language isn't English, consider that they might speak 3 or 4 languages fluently while you're struggling with just one. Until next time, keep your mind open to the extraordinary talents of ordinary people.